the world to be helpers. Remember we talked about that and Mr. Rogers and everything? I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't see it. For some reason, I couldn't see the chat. I had to lean in real close. Remember, I said it a couple times. I said, wow, that's crazy. The light and the whole screen was off. And it was getting really kind of blurry. And here I find out after the fact that one of our own gatekeepers is in an actual active tornado with no idea where to go or how to, scared, losing electric, hearing hail hit the house, damage. Luckily, they're fine, but I had no idea. And I'm just over here yammering about tornadoes and weathering the storm and being in the light in the eye of the storm and all this stuff. I have no idea till after the fact. I looked after and somebody said, I hope that this person will come in and check in with us. And that's when I caught into it and everything started losing my train of thought and had no idea. They just kind of put out all this information and then just kind of dumped me. And I tried to go back to where I thought it made sense. Guys, what you witnessed last night was something really pretty wild. It's not the first time it's happened. But let's get these fellas in here and we'll talk about it because there's a lot of other strange things that's been going on. How's everybody doing? Good to see you, Travis. I hope you're one foot in front of the other, baby. Stay strong. Hey, Slow, how you doing, Vixen? How you doing? Ted, I hear you got to go to bed. Ted's got to go to bed. So I know you're here in spirit, my love. And Lord Connor as well. And there's Sir Bowden in the chat. There's Lulabelle. Hello, darling. How you doing? So everybody in here that was here last night. Hey, Uncommon Belief. Good to see you, babe. And everybody that was here last night can tell I was just rolling with it. And they're putting stuff in, I'm like, why am I saying that? Okay, just say it. For 2.5 hours. Sometimes it's funny because I think last night was one of the times that I can really lean back and into it and be honest and say half of it I don't remember. If I went back and watched it, I did go back and read the chat to see how everything broke down, and I could tell where I was not being blocked. It was like I was riding on that energy, and we were talking about losing, our dear gatekeeper Glenn, and we're talking about all that, and the energy was just on fire last night in the chat. It was absolutely amazing. So I don't know. I can't explain it all. I think we witnessed something that was quite the thing last night, and I'm glad you were here if you were here to see it. If not, I'm glad you're here tonight. So we have been talking about the wonderful John Keel, and my friend here often mentioned in conversations Fort and Forteans, and how John Keel was a Fortean and very interested in things, I don't know, odd things that might catch your fancy, like frogs falling out of the sky, raw meat, or dinosaurs that were supposed to be extinct being seen, or crazy lights in the sky, UFOs, alien abductions, cats with wings, little people, big people, giants, you name it, from Stonehenge to strangest thing you can imagine. And he was into it. And I just think it's amazing to be able to, after all these years, go back and kind of unpack it. It seems like almost new to me. So I started digging into Mothman. And, from the other episodes we've done on this with Indrid Cole and Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the whole shebang, there's so much to it. There's so much to it that mostly the first couple episodes are basically just putting facts out there to say, don't listen to these people who say, it was some guy in a suit. Or it was, kids throwing up lanterns and, or people coming in on gliders and swooping over people. I'm sure those things happen. Just like with Harry Price, I'm sure there was many a thing that were made up out of just, dust and glitter. You know what I mean? But not the Mothman. There's so much more to it. So while Steve and I were talking about it, we said we'd love to have Brian on talk about it too. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So first off, in the gate, if he's ready, thumbs up. If Mr. Steve is ready, he's ready. Let's bring him in. How you doing, my friend? Come on here, Steve Stockton.
Exceptionally well. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Saying hi to the chat there. I'm logged in under Tales Untold. That's the rebrand of Among the Missing. I moved all the missing person stuff over to Missing Persons Mysteries. telling stories now over on Tales
Love
Untold.
it.
Having our first release over
Telling
there
stories.
about some feral people in the Appalachian Mountains. So go check it out if you haven't already.
Just interesting stuff, just like John Keel. That's just what we're interested in. We're still interested in. I don't think I've tired of the story yet. Have you, Steve?
I haven't put
For
my
50
shovel
some years.
down yet since
You keep
4 or
digging.
5 years old. Yep.
So, and you're the one who was always interjecting Keel into conversation, and I would listen to the stories and I would try to, but that's a perfect example, me snapping into it after all this time of
Yeah.
when your conscience is ready, it floods in like
It's there, and
dam
there's so
burst.
much to unpack there. I mean, the guy was just a legend. And if you've ever seen Kolchak, the Night Stalker's famous
Yes.
series, that
Yes.
was based on Keel. So there you go.
Absolutely. So we decided let's bring this old son of a gun in. And you ready? Thumbs up. Mr. Brian Bowden, everybody, Sir Bowden to everybody here. He is a gatekeeper, friend of the show, author, a host of many podcasts, just like Mr. Steve Stockton here. So let's bring him in, and we're going to get his vantage point as well. Hello, Sir Bowden.
Good. I was trying to give a Steve applause, but it didn't come through the back end. So.
How you doing, Sir Brian?
It's good to see both of you.
Good.
To everybody and everybody. I love everybody. It's in that is all
that
the
is here. This chat.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a great vibe, especially with all the crap going on in this world today.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yeah. So that's it. The whole thing, everything's been saged. Only positive can remain. So if people come in, if they made it through the intro with all that stuff, they're like, "What the hell is this?" I'm here for axe murderers and and shadow people and demons who eat kids. Listen, that's all here. It's just you got to get through the great culling first, because I don't want you in my chat. I don't want you listening. I don't want you mucking up the vibe, man. If you're going to be, that
you don't want to harsh them.
If you're here for the wrong reason, if you're here for the wrong reason, it's all about intent. And we really find a lot of information on these shows. Last night, guys, I'm telling you, you should have seen it. I had a whole thing planned. And videos, worked all day, got the videos of doing 1970s paranormal TV, talked for 2.5 hours about absolutely nothing, I thought. Turns out I'm talking about Tornado Live, Ryan Hall, y'all. If you don't know that channel, it's an amazing YouTube channel. And it's a perfect thing. It's like all these people that got together and do what they love and do what they're good at. Meteorologists, some of whom are like 19 when they got their PhD, and the brains that are behind this is amazing. These 12 years old, Doogie Howsers of meteorology, these guys. And then there's other people that their thing is the tech, and then there's the storm chasers out in the field with the cameras. Then there's the other people watching the little cell over here. I'm watching them save lives in real time. It's amazing. 180,000 K in their live chat alone, watching tornadoes. It's a phenomenon. But I would choose to turn that on before I would do my local. I really would, because they're watching what's hitting it and saving lives. And then at the same time, they've got a little telethon, like a, what do you call it, Jerry Lewis MS telethon, Steve?
Yeah.
But the thing racking, because
that was Jerry Lewis.
Yeah. That's it. And it's rolling like crazy at $81,000 that people that are so grateful they're just not in the path of this stupid thing, watching other towns get leveled. And then they go down and get gift cards, water, food, shelter. And they show you live. It's an amazing thing. Meanwhile, I got somebody in my gatekeepers chat, didn't even know it because I couldn't see the chat. They fogged it up on me. And they're just telling me these things to say. I have whole chunks of that show, 15, 20 minutes at a time. I don't even remember what the hell I said. Something was working through me. Just being intent and being willing to do it. Do you see where I'm coming from? It was insane.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's divine. It's like divine intervention, right?
The whole show.
I've actually driven through 3 tornadoes. And every time I was in a 92 Integra, and it's really not the car you want to be in. You don't want to be in anything, actually. And you're driving through, and it is. And the worst are the ones at night. And I'm catching it, and people, when the 18-wheelers pull over, get off the road.
I don't
And
like them. I was in Alabama, in the valley. We had 11 in one day. I mean, just the stories. But here's the thing: it was all about, the whole show was about hope and not giving up in the storm and powering through. Meanwhile, my chat is handling like a champ. Everybody's praying. Everybody's throwing out good energy. Everybody's handling everything. This person was losing electric and said, "If I don't come back, you'll know." Watch it. We're watching it on radar. It was.
But this
and
is
I had
what,
no idea. I had
this is
no
why
idea.
I love this. I love you. I love you, Steve. But I love everybody in this
I love
chat.
Steve. I love you. I love you,
and
Brian.
I love you. No, it's really important because they're not just watchers or subscribers. It's family, and everybody's on the same vibe. It's about helping people and caring about them. You can see it. Hey, how's it going? Whatever. These are people that, even though we have social media and we may be separated by thousands of miles,
It's crazy. It's crazy.
everybody knows people and like, oh yeah, and this is what it's like for some of us. You're a good soul. You do things for people, and that one moment where you get to meet people for the real, like someone yells your name, like, who are you? Like, and you're like, oh, I'm Sean. I'm like, oh my God, and you meet people for the first time. It's awesome, So I commend everybody in chat for keeping, the gatekeepers, steady and going. Great.
You're muted,
Sysco,
Sysco.
your microphone. This is the one few times
Here we
you
go.
won't be speaking.
Right.
Yes,
Seatbelt sign. The seatbelt sign. You look. If you need to get up, move around a cabin, I think it's safe, Steve. I think it's safe. But please, if you be seated again, put that seatbelt on, because there's no telling what's going to happen tonight. We're talking about Mothman. Every time we talk about Mothman, something happens. Steve, is it true? Every time. And Bri, you're in here, and what I'd love to do to start, because I know everybody's got theory on Mothman and John Keel and everything. I'd like to go around and say what everybody thought about John first, and I have a little bit of an interview. I think it's going to be a treat for both of you, and then we can.
I was watching you too, and you talked about Keel, and it starts right. So you go through, thank God for the longer intro, because it helped me make my dinner for the night. And I'm sitting there, and so I'm on with Bowden, and the next thing and I'm like, you're like, oh my God, what did I do? So, but there's a lot of stuff I think you guys may have not covered that's very important about Keel. So you do what you do. Yeah. Yes. Coconuckers. You can't go wrong with that.
Yep. I'm sure that is that a song? I'm pretty sure that's a song. Yep. I love you too, Lindsay. We love you too.
Hey, Lindsay.
And God bless. I know Scott's out there. He's listening. I think he's traveling. And I was so glad to hear from Andrew Trucking last night, and so many other people that popped in. And if you could take this moment, please go out, give it a thumbs up. Thank you to everybody who commented on last night's video, because man, that helps with the algorithms and YouTube. And if you can, share it out. This is a really good subject. We're going to dig a little deeper here, because again, we're past the point of it was a guy in a suit. All three of us here are in agreement that it's not the only place he's been seen. We're all three in agreement that, the only reason we're not putting it together is because everywhere he's seen, he gets a different name. Birdman, the winged man of Kalamazoo, whatever. The humanoids of Chicago. Listen, they're all ancient. They're all in the same ilk, even if they got a little bit of differential. We got to stop worrying about all this. But my Bigfoot was gray. You're saying your Bigfoot was dark brown. Therefore, you're lying to me because I know what I saw. No. There's different, please. It's like kittens. Would you ever say that you don't have a real kitten? Because mine is the kitten I know is an orange tabby, and you're saying yours is a black tuxedo. There's no such thing as my cat's. That's how stupid it sounds. We got to get past that point. Same thing with ghosts. Am I right? So 100%. Let's go around. I'd love to hear what you think as being the guest, Bri. Tell me what you think about when you think about John Keel and how you first learned about him and what intrigued you about him. Was it Mothman or was it something else? Tell me what you think.
So it was primarily Mothman prophecies and people talking about it. And we were fairly young at the time. I remember some of his books coming out because they used to be in paperback plus, and it would be on that wire rack thing. in the local candy store where you would buy your cigarettes and candy and comic books, and having so few paranormal based anything. There was Bigfoot, there was Loch Ness Monster, and that strange book that he had was like, oh my God, we got to get this, because there were so few and far in between. It's like getting a unicorn one day.
Yeah.
So coming up with like $6.95 to buy it was pricey at that time. But some kid, we always would convince the one kid whose parents are like two psychiatrists, never home, always had some money. Like, dude, you got to get that book right there. So they buy it, and then we would all take turns. And I knew of him. I do believe I've not personally met him, but I've passed by him several times in New York City.
Wow! How cool!
Yeah, on the Upper West Side.
What I was thinking was like a drive-by sighting of a Fortean. Yeah,
well,
I don't know. There's something there.
You know what? I think each one of us, have been a Fortean since we've first started out. I mean, my favorite show in the world. It wasn't In Search Of. It was Kolchak. The Night Stalker. That was
the Night Stalker. Absolutely.
Show. I mean, like literally, it was like, I want to kind of do this. I want to go find these vampires. I want to go. And what a great character. Even the actor, Gavin or whatever his name, something, Darren McGavin. I think that's his name.
That's it.
Yeah, he was just fantastic. Now, something that was interesting, because I didn't go too far into Keel's bio, but I learned way later on. I didn't know about the Get Smart stuff. He wrote a lot of stuff. He was doing comic books. He was doing things that we were doing all our lives, but he really took it to an nth level. And here's the thing about Keel that is most important. It's not the Mothman prophecies. It's not all his books. The man was a magician, and his primary goal was going and looking around the world at different types of magic, sleight of hand. And when you have somebody like that goes someplace to investigate, they got the eye for it. They're looking for, okay, how did he do that? That is so huge in all this stuff. This is what I do. I think, something happens, you get the light, you're like, okay, where could that come from? Boom, boom. You look at all the things. Some people are like, wow, it's a light. It's about a UFO. This guy is taking it from a totally different perspective, because he was an illusionist. Magic played a huge role in everything he did. The sleight of hand and everything. So I just think he's fantastic. I think he was on to a lot of different things, and he called it what he called it. Just like a really, really great man. I really wish I had an opportunity to speak with him personally, especially now. But as far as inspirations are concerned, I mean, he's right up there. But this series right here, you can't beat this. The only way you could beat this is if Steve Stockton put out a series in TV, and we get somebody to play Steve, or Steve could play Steve, and then they can send people out and do all these mysteries and stuff like that.
If any production companies listening, I'd be.
There he is. I'll tell you what. I was home watching a little show, and I was digging into. I'm looking into the Land Between the Lakes and the LBI, and not LBI. That's out here by me, but the Land Between the Lakes and all that. Trying to sort all that. Man, that's one that there's a lot of layers there. A lot of layers. So I was going through that, and I pulled up. I wanted to watch American Werewolves again because it's such a great documentary. I highly recommend it. Highly recommended. Welcome everybody that's just coming in. UFO right. Bigfoot. RP, I see you. How you doing, Shug? Welcome. So wanted to see it again, and somebody took it off, and I'm like, oh, dastard.
And you mentioned it. There's American Werewolves too.
Hey, there it is. And that's what I was going to say.
And I'm in this one. Go check it out on Amazon Prime Video or order the DVD.
And that was a surprise. That was a surprise that hit me because I didn't realize it. And I'm looking for American Werewolves, and all of a sudden it pulls up Skinwalkers, American Werewolves 2, and I start watching the trailer for it. And there's Steve Stockton, and I'm like, holy shit!
I love that. So, I love that
because Ron Murphy's in the first one, and he was like the first 5 minutes, and Steve was in the first 5 minutes trailer. I have not seen the whole show yet, but when did that come out, Steve?
I believe last year they started premiering at some festivals and stuff. And
So
I have to go dig around and watch that.
let's
But
see,
here's something that's very interesting. You were talking about Land Between the Lakes. Did you know that there was another incident like the Land Between the Lakes that took place in Jersey?
what part of Jersey?
What do you think?
The Pine Barrens?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, geez. I'm so close.
I'm
to
hanging out. I'm hanging out this summer. This a couple of years ago, and I go to Jenkinson's.
Yeah,
boardwalk.
yeah. Point Pleasant, right, right down the
Yeah.
street.
So,
Shut up,
because the
Bowden.
kids are going right there.
I
So
got
I'm
nothing.
on
I
the
got a
boardwalk.
wall of glass to my back, and not 10 feet behind that wall of glass is the wetland preserve
Yep.
and the bay. And I'm telling you, the stuff that walks around lurks in there. So thank you very much. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So I'm hanging out there, and I'm like, I'm stopping to smoke a cigarette off the pier, and they're doing a 3D or a 7D werewolf movie there. Ooh, and I'm like, that ain't nothing like the real thing because I've seen them, and and this guy goes, you have, and I said, yeah, I investigate stuff like that. They're not werewolves. I can go into the Dogman lichens, whatever.
It's different.
And he goes, I didn't know you. You don't know me, but I used to work with the police department, and there was an incident not that long ago down at the Pine Barrens. They went, family went out hiking, and hunting. For the weekend, camping. Weren't heard from for a couple of days. Grandmother's like, where are they? They go look for them, and they find basically their tents ripped to shreds, blood everywhere, body parts. And of course, they said strange footprints. And the police, there was a Men in Black came in, military though, and they took over, and no one saw anything. Wink,
And that's
wink.
all she wrote. And that's all she wrote. That's
Yep.
it.
Yep.
And constant like this. And I tell people all the time, I tell people at work or show something or say something. Why am I not seeing it on the news? I don't understand. I just think that if something like that was going on in the neighborhood, and the minute they start clutching anything that's up in here, I'm just like, my door shuts. And I'm like,
about a year ago, it was on the news.
But or so fast, or it's not reported the way. Listen, any shore town, dude. Jaws had it right. Any shore town, any coastal town, you have no idea the crime, the murders, the stuff and they're going to keep a lid on it because that tourism.
Tourism.
And that goes for any town that has tourism like that.
Smokies,
Disney,
Smoky Mountains National Park. Yeah,
absolutely.
They keep it on the down low.
Absolutely.
If they acknowledge that Bigfoot exists and they know he exists, okay, they know. I just did a Bigfoot expedition in Mayaca in Florida. It was overnight. Caught a left and right print 25 inches long. That thing is close to 10 feet tall.
It's got to be
1,500 pounds minimum. Okay.
But it's not going to be on the news tonight.
No, it won't.
And if
be.
it is, they're going to be laughing and they're going to be making jokes. Look, we just watched the last time we did this episode, John Keel sitting had to be what early
Letterman?
Yeah, on Letterman.
Yep.
And Letterman's trying to be a cheeky monkey, and I look at him different now that I did in the 80s. And he's just sitting there holding his own and going over all this crazy stuff. And it's like talking about the news today. It's like everything I just said is 100% factual. It's actually happening right fucking now. It sounds like I'm lying.
I see what you did there.
Right. I see what you did there. But the reason why they can't acknowledge Bigfoot, if they do you know how much money they would lose? The logging industry would be done.
Yeah.
The tourism industry would be done. The national parks would be done.
Same with 411.
Close to $1 trillion a year. You think they're going to give up $1 trillion?
Aliens, portals, rakes, these dogmen, people, things eating other things. I mean, it's happening all the time. Steve, real quick before we get kicked off, hang on one second. I need to know when you started with Keel. And what intrigued you of Keel?
Oh gosh, I found
because I know it goes way back for you. Yeah, not to cut you off, Brian, but I just wanted to make sure I don't forget.
Strange Creatures from Time and Space came out in I believe 1970, and like Brian was talking about, I found it on in the paperback rack of the drugstore, the little spinny thing. I'm like, what is this? And just off I went, and that's I think his first book, Jado, came out in, I want to say 57. So I had to go back and find that it was out of print by that time. But just Strange Creatures from Time and Space. So Mothman didn't come out until I think 75. So, but yeah, it just took me right away because I was already into Frank Edwards and Ivan Sanderson and people like that, Charles Fort. Those were laborious reads for a little kid, but I soldiered through them because I love the content and the context that everything is not as it seems. There's stuff out there that people know it's there, but they just don't talk about it.
Exactly. Now, this is just some B-roll from the movie, guys, because what I wanted to do, I thought it would be fun because I have no idea what Brian thinks about the movie. I have no idea. I've spoken a little bit to Steve about the book, but we had discussed this, Brian, as far as book versus movie. I watched the movie back when it came out, didn't really pay a lot of attention to it, didn't understand it, but hadn't read the book. Then
Right.
I saw the movie, read a little bit of the book, started doing some research in it and everything that's going on. Watched the movie again and went, man, it's a masterpiece. Do you see what I mean? The different characters. This one here is I can't remember what his name was. Hang on, I've got it written down. I've got notes, folks. So
Oh, I've got notes too.
you got he's playing John Klein, who is a journalist for the Washington Post, which of course isn't exactly John Keel, but it is in reference to John Keel. And what the screenwriter did, Steve and I kind of agreed on this, was he split Keel up into several different characters in this movie.
Yep.
It was genius the way he did it. And if you look at John Klein, this actually happened where somebody saw Keel come to his door at 3:00 in the morning, not 2:30. But all of the weird stuff in this movie happened. It's just like real life, right, Steve? And he split him up. So Klein is kind of playing the part of Keel as the journalist. He didn't accidentally wind up there, though. He was actually going there for another story about a cat with wings, and stumbled onto this journalist named Mary Hire, and she was the one keeping all of the tabs on all the weird stuff going down in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So it's quite the thing. Now, the cop here that you see here, this is the sheriff. This is played by Laura Linney, and she is Connie Mills. And the reason that they put her in there is she's actually playing the journalist Mary Hire, who all the locals would talk to and trust and tell these stories because they were traumatized. They were hypnotized. They were stuck in trances. Some of them would start having dreams. Some of them would be sick. Steve and I pulled up that they would have all kind of problem with their organs, and some of them were even peeing black. Their eyes would swell up almost like an arc weld burn. If you're not wearing a mask, felt like they had sand in their eyes for like 4 days. She actually plays a great part in kind of a, what would you call that, Steve, in screenwriting? Like a shadow role where you're kind of playing a person, but hints of their character. It's not a composite character. It's like a shadow character or something like that.
Types and shadows.
It's kind of cool.
Facets, and that's a thing that they use in a lot of stuff. Like first thing springs to mind, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. If you read the book, there were several different characters that they combined into one movie. Or then like this, they can take one and make 2 or 3 different people out of it, just to carry.
It all depends on the screenwriter and how much money they have and how quick they want to make this movie. So they'll do that. They don't want to spend so much on a cast. And they just want to make it concise because there's so much complexity to what Keel is putting out.
And book.
I read it. Yeah, I read it way after. Saw the movie, then read it way after. I read bits and pieces of it, but I'm a young kid at the time. Yeah. I'm like, like it's not a comic book type of thing. was
But to
kind of
take
cool.
that book and make sense out of it and give it some kind of chronological order and try to get all those characters in there, I think they did a good job. I was a little bit more, going at it the other way and just going in fresh. I couldn't make sense of what we were talking about here. I had no idea how deep the actual story was. But who you see there is Will Patton, and he's another composite character. He is Gordon Smallway, and he is a composite character of Woodrow Derenberger, who Steve and I covered extensively with Indrid Cole, and another character, like 2 or 3 other witness characters. Nobody ever leaned against a tree and was found frozen, but what they were trying to portray was this trance-like state. People were really never the same. Keel, in his interview, which I'm going to play here in a little bit, he actually talks about how he would go back and study the kids that these witnesses would have because they expected them to be a little bit different or a little bit special.
There were people
it's
there
crazy.
that had children, and the way he kind of stated it is, was it a natural thing or was it some kind of intervention in the pregnancy? And he thought they came around very, very strange. And he was studying them, and they turned out to be, well, whatever. You'll go into it, but it's reminiscent. He also mentioned at one point, because I've seen a couple of interviews with him, about there were people that were coming around. He just missed it.
Yes.
There was something people, they didn't know about.
Yes. And he talks about it in this interview. He talks about phantom social workers. It's the craziest crap you ever heard, guys.
Yeah,
and nobody can say it like Keel and I. That's why I went ahead and I've got the interview for you. And it's like nuts. No. It's just, it's going to come, and we could talk over this or whatever. This is just a little background stuff of, this is, a lot of gifts and stuff put together of the movie, but it does tell the characters. I wanted you to be sure you understood that Will Patton was a composite character, and nobody died leaning against a tree. I don't know why they put it in there. I guess it was just to show the intensity of it, Steve. I guess that would be our guess. But the heavy trance, like the people were different from that point on. These witnesses, some of them didn't heal completely, had problems forever.
What a great representation, being an investigator for so many decades now. And I remember when Steve, you like experts. I'm not an expert. I have a lot of experience, but there is no expert. Actually, there are experts. They work for a government. You will never meet them. They're probably
you'll never know their name.
Sysco and I have talked about that. We're not experts on anything.
No.
And in fact, Keel used to carry a business card that said authority on absolutely nothing.
I love it. Love it.
But the portrayal of the people affected is really almost verbatim to a lot of how people that I've interviewed over the years that have had an experience, no matter what it is, and we'll use paranormal as a giant bubble for UFOs, cryptids, just crazy stuff, whatever. They're unnerved and they don't like it. It's like there's something out of their control, and the closest thing they have is, a 45 or a shotgun. They're really not happy.
And it's crazy. And just like in this picture here, everybody kept saying the eyes. There's a witness who, a husband to a witness who comes out and speaks just for her. He'll tell you on several documentaries. He says, I come out and speak, so I don't want people to think she's crazy. Hey, Conflict, how you doing, sweetie?
There's a reason.
On the Vril. Yeah, I bet you it's good too. He's got one out on the Vril.
Play a role in this. And
it's amazing.
The eyes are the windows to the soul, but it's also a window to the consciousness. And there
Absolutely.
are other things going on in the process, and this is what's affecting them.
This is why the programming as well. And I think this is why a lot of the phone calls, because what happens through a phone call, Steve, we're exchanging energy. We're accepting energy. We're taking energy, the buzzing and the prophecies. Now, in the book, Keel explains that there were more than one character. He gives them a lot of pseudonyms, but there was more than one character than Indrid Cole. There was Apol, there was Mr. Apol, and he was the one that was actually calling on the phone and saying things like the Denver 9 and the flight that's going to crash and 300 people will die and different things like this. And it was wild the way it said that he would give prophecies. Like he said that MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., would be shot. He'd be shot in Memphis. He'd be shot on a porch. But he said I think it was he predicted it to be in February, and it actually happened in April on the 4th. He said he got that right, but the month wrong. So it was almost like those demons that come and try to mimic somebody, but there'll be 6 fingers or something will be
Right.
off. It's
Yep.
similar to that, guys. And like this scene here, this is a scene. This was 2 kids. This actually happened. They're doing what kids do in Lover's Lane, and they're completely naked. And when the Mothman shows up, as you can see here, the radiation or whatever you want to say, the light, the glow, the infrared, whatever it is, actually burned their skin, and they had a hard time trying to explain how they were sunburned all over their bodies. There was so much that happened during this, and of course the bridge, but
There's
you know,
multiple things
crazy.
taking place at the same time. That's what
Now
people
this
don't
guy,
realize.
this guy is my favorite character. Wait, who you just saw there was oh gosh, what's his name? I'll find it. Give me a sec. It is Alexander Leak is the name of the character. Alexander Leak. And he is a physics professor at a Cornell, and he is another piece of Keel. I'm comfortable saying that. This is just my guess, Steve, but I think he's portraying that part of Keel that was the investigator on ancient creatures and was the cryptozoologist kind. Although Keel didn't go crazy like was portrayed by this one guy who said he was locked up for 4 years. But he did get extremely paranoid toward the end of his life there, and he died just 3 years after this movie was released. He did get to see it. He was going to be in it. But once he said that he would be in the picture and was waiting for the next instructions, he started having problems with his eyes. Now, you figure what you want for that, but that was nuts. What do you guys want to say about that? Also, I'd like to add this. If you think about it, I think my theory might be correct, because if you look at Alexander Leak's name, what's Leak spelled backwards?
Yep.
What do you think? What do you guys think about that?
The Easter eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of Easter eggs in this. But you got to understand that what's taking place here in the Mothman area and relating to this subject and this, there are multiple variables taking place. It's not just a cryptid. There are extraterrestrials, ultra terrestrials, interdimensionals. There's a variety of different things, and there are individuals in the government and around that call them Men in Black, whatever their task. They're part of that. They're beings that are interdimensional, ultra dimensional, ultra terrestrial, and them warning you is they're seeing things. And when you got to understand something, when we get rid of the meat suits and we go back up to source, I'll say heaven, whatever it is, you know everything about everybody. There's not one thing you'll know everything about everybody. You'll know past, present, and future because it all plays out at the same time. The only time it gets messed up is if someone monkeying with time. And they're doing it. And there's an event that took place here in Point Pleasant that created a playing around with time. So
that was also another super collider, wasn't it? In near there,
yeah.
Similar, right?
I
Not as big as CERN, but
I'll tell you.
Well,
I mean, if you really want to go,
I agree 100% with what you're saying, and I think, and keep in mind, guys, that if that's true, both things can be true at the same time to help bring in these things. Because again, I'm listening to other people on other channels. I love, some of the new people that are coming in and are discovering it. They're jumping in head first into this, and they're fresh to accept the fact that sometimes these creatures come in and don't really kind of realize where they are at first, because you're seeing Bigfoots in this valley where, like, how did you even get there, down the cliff or whatever, and they come in kind of stumbling around like, whoa, and then try to decide where to go. That matches up to many stories, one of them being in Skinwalker Ranch. The sky opens up and the thing just steps through. Steve, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I covered that before. The lady, I can't remember the first husband and wife, that started having those strange. She was washing her dishes one morning, looking out the kitchen window, saw what she described as a portal open up. A bipedal, hairy creature, a dog man, Bigfoot, something or other, came stepping out, stomped off, and it closed back up. But same window, different time. She saw it open up, and there was a man sitting at a desk doing something. He looks up, sees her, looks kind of annoyed, does something, and then the portal closes back. So it's much
Whoa.
more than just something supernatural there. There are other
So much
things
more.
that work and at play.
It's
But
so
this
much
is
more.
so
If
much
I
more
think we
than
can
just
kind of,
the Mothman. I want to
I
say hi
think
to
we can.
Conflict Radio Official who's in here. Hey, how you doing?
What's up,
Got your
Michael?
message. I'll be happy to be on your show, buddy. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So here's something, right? Like I was, for a majority of my life, I was flesh and blood on Bigfoot. And then I had several experiences that totally changed that. So when I went to school, I studied physics, string theory and quantum, and astronomy. So I was thinking, I'll be an astrophysicist. And then I realized I'll never make money. I'll publish stuff that somebody else will own, and I'm not doing that. Right. We were on an expedition. We were on a research day night. We had an encounter with this Bigfoot. It gave us 3 whoops. 2 were right in front of us. It reverberated off my chest like I was at a Lemmy concert. That's a whoop whoop. The 3rd one, without missing the cadence and everything, was 2 miles down the road at the other end of the lake. The only way that creature could do that, the only way, is if it can open some kind of portal, step into it, and come out where it wants. And everybody's like, well, how do they do that? Ron Moorhead has a great book on it. I'm friendly with Ron. I talked to him. I'm like, oh my God, I just got this. Yep. And I explained my stuff to him. There are creatures that can do this. We're doing it. We're able to change our molecular structure.
There's
Go
doing
through
that, and if you
anything.
start thinking about spirits as well, not to stop you right, but spirits as well, it's the same thing. They're not physical, and they come in and they're physical for a little bit. It takes that energy, and they have to figure out how to do it. Similar type of thing, but we also have to realize that some are here and don't do that. Which is why I put that in the book in Cabin 22. There was some that kind of decided to stay here and assimilate,
It's
and
like
then
Costco. It's
others
like
that come in when they need it because they're telepathic and they knew they were in trouble. It's like, nope, none of that. And they came through that portal and they handled it and went on about their business and just left it. And people saying all the time, we don't see dead bodies. Look, I live in the woods all over the United States. And I'll tell you, I never came up on a dead bear carcass or a dead, different things too. But I think they're not allowed to leave them here, or our atmosphere won't accept them for very long in this atmosphere, and they go back to where they.
I think they're buried so deep. They're very protective of their family and the remains. They bury them really deep. Lots of rocks. You're never going to find them. You're just not going to. But
and they go back through. They go back through. And here's.
I'm just going to tell you one thing. The process of changing your molecular structure is done through, even the octopus does it. It can change its form, shape, color, texture, whatever. But it's called neutrino physics. And the first big collider, accelerator, was Fermilab, and it's in Illinois. Specifically, Batavia, Illinois, which is about 40 miles outside of Chicago. Okay? And they deal with stuff, that particle physics, acceleration, atoms, basically nuclear-based type of stuff as well. And what's really important in relationship to the Mothman, so the TNT factory was a DuPont factory, and they built 3 of them in Morgantown Ordnance Works in Morgantown, West Virginia. That factory, before it was doing TNT, was building stuff for the atomic bomb. Why do you think all those crazy lights were there? They were there by, Keel won't say UFOs, but they were extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, ultra-terrestrials that have been curious, like, oh, we're playing around with nuclear fusion now. And I'm sure that they exploded a ton of stuff. If you actually ask some people, getting big bombs, big, explosions, and they'll say yes. Some people said, yeah, they used to blow stuff up there all the time. That explosion and material fractures timelines. Okay, it does. And when you fracture something, and this is one timeline, this is this is the timeline. Boom, blows up. And when you rejoin, when you're not knowing what you're doing and you can't see it, this is our timeline up till 2009. Okay. And then it joins with the timeline that's either the next to us or part of the timeline that's left. And now we're joined with another timeline from 2009, a fraction of a second early, after.
Why it knocks everything off with the Mandela effect, and
That's the Mandela effect. It was yeah.
Yeah, it becomes, Cheez-Its without the Z. I mean, it's nuts. But something else is also true. Seems to be this, I don't want to say unwritten book, because I'm sure somewhere it's written down in Akashic records. Who knows? But everybody that keeps coming up with these things where there's rules, like silver bullets for werewolves, you have to invite the vampire, just whatever. And I don't want to even call them rules. I want to say that just factors that are, factors that are part of the facts. And when in this scene right here, when John Klein is talking to Professor Leek, both of them being Keel, in the screenwriter's mind, it's such a great scene when you realize this, where he's sitting at the table. He's almost like it's a personified conversation going on in Keel's head the whole time he's trying to sort this out. What do you think, Steve? And I think we can hear this one.
Yeah, I agree. It's Keel basically arguing or conversing with himself to try to figure this out. And that's the way the man worked.
Yeah, and it's very similar also, this scene, to many scenes in like Fallen, and I'm sure, Brian, a lot of movies too that this would match up with, but it's that moment where they realize you're up against something ancient here. Yep. And there's rules, and it's a big club and you're not in it, kind of thing. And let's see if we can listen to this. It's almost done, and then we'll start the interview. It gets louder here at the end.
Trust me, I turned away years ago, and I've never looked back. Didn't you need to know?
That's so Fallen right there.
We're not allowed to know.
Maybe we're just not allowed to know, Steve. Maybe we're just not allowed to know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
it's not time to know yet. That's another thing.
That's another one. But they're messing with all this stuff, and all of this is so much more, and again, the bridge thing is a little bit annoying too, because first of all, people forget, 46 people died here. Christmas packages floating is probably one of the saddest things I've ever visual from this. And I'm not saying the Mothman did it. There was too many prophecies that were coming to these people where it was putting it in their mind. But like, I'm still at where I was before, Steve. I don't think he was warning them. I think he was bragging. This is going to happen. I'm here to feed on this. This is the energy. It was 13 months. For 13 months, right? And this is the flap of it. Started in, and I've got the exact dates here, depending on which count if you count the grave diggers who saw him first, or you start with the first witnesses in the car where it ran alongside, or you start with, I think it was the day before, about an hour away, 45 minutes away, is the story where you hear the families watching TV, and the guy's a farmer. Dog is getting restless. TV's going a little crazy, making funny sounds, starts making this high buzzing sound. The dog starts growling, looking out the window, once out the door. He opens the door because he's hearing something screeching outside, some kind of sound coming from outside. He opens the door, dog runs out, never sees the dog again. Lost him in the wood line, calling him, doing whatever, never. At the same time, turns around, the TV explodes, sends glass all over the place. And like I said, never saw the dog again. Everything was strange. Then all the sounds stopped.
He
saw the red eyes.
one of the witnesses, when they were fleeing from the creature, claimed that they saw a dog on the side of the road. I think a dead dog on the side of the road. So
True,
may have
Steve.
been the same dog, but don't
Could have
know
been.
for sure. But that's been alluded to in the book.
Could have been.
So-
Could have been.
Here's it's very interesting what you said, because everybody, like, if you just watch the movie and like, oh, he's a harbinger of death. No, he's not.
He's bragging.
This is what takes place with these creatures when you fracture and you have an ultra terrestrial, right? That's what he said, ultra, terrestrial, ultra dimensional. They operate in a totally different environment than we do, and they're ultra, meaning they know everything, and we don't know. I'm going to say it. Humans think they know everything. We're too stupid to know it.
We're too stupid to know it, man.
I don't want to
It's
use
crazy.
the term
And
stupid,
these
but
guys,
we're not able to
crazy.
comprehend it or wrap our minds around it. But I believe this creature feeds. Well, it does feed on flesh, and I do. But 99% of it, they feed off of fear and
Fear.
anguish.
It's a loosh. It's a loosh. I mean,
It's
Steve and I have been
100%.
saying this for years, and I keep getting people here, and they go, "No, we can't," And I'm like, "It's constant in Chicago. It's constant here. It's constant there."
Well-
Maybe it's not able nor has the need to get in there and mess with people's minds. And how would we know in a city like Chicago where everybody's coming and going so fast? You don't know your neighbor. You're lucky if you see the guy down the hall every once in a while, bumping into him at the mailbox downstairs, or the whatever it may be. In the city life like that, you're just trying to gray man it and get to your job and get home, whatever. Nobody knows each other. How would we know if there was a systematic group of people in a town and it's sitting on a building or whatever, and they're having dreams of, I don't know, bullets flying or whatever it may be, or some kind of massacre or attack on the street or drive by? How would they know that these dreams are being put there by a Mothman? They're not a small town talking to each other and telling one reporter about their stories. See? Do you see what I mean? It's different. Go ahead.
So this goes back to the Tevatron that was started, and they ramped that up. And in 2009, Fiona Broom, who was a Fortean, she was the one that coined the Mandela effect. She said Mandela died in the 80s, but clearly he didn't. But he did die in the 80s, because if you take the principle that I'm putting forth, that when they started playing around with this collider, which is 46 miles or 42 miles from Chicago, and they created a crack, it's like break a vase, and glue it back together again. It's always going to be a speck in there. And
So
these
true.
beings are looking like, and normally in the dark, red eyes.
Yeah.
They live in the dark. That's where they operate. They see like, what's that white thing? And they go through the crack and they come out and they're like, wow, this is like going to the Golden Corral. We have all this to feed from.
And then the more fear, and then whether they're in cahoots with the powers that be that are putting out all this, MK Ultra, Monarch, Butterfly, the whole Monarch. Listen, guys, there's so much going on. You want to know how much is going on? When you put on a YouTube video, I'm gonna show you what's going on. You put a video, and one of these short ads come. Listen to me. There is a whole staff of people that know exactly how long, what they have to say, what music, what visual to get you to go past that 5-second skip mark, right? And they're working hard at it. 5 seconds of time. In that 5 seconds of time, what's happening right now? Think about this. If you're in America, you may have seen this commercial. So it's AI, and it's going to have a visual, something like an orange, a glass of maybe something foaming out of the glass, and somebody's whacking a silver spoon, and they're clanking the spoons together. All right, that gets your visual, which occupies a certain part of your brain. At the same time, they bring on an AI generated voice from somebody that's familiar, like Judge Judy or Martin Sheen or somebody like this, and it's going to be very similar to what I said about the mimic coming back, and it's got just something off. Maybe it's got a glitch or a click, or it's got 6 fingers or a limp or whatever, a tail. So it comes in and it sounds like Judge Judy, but there's something off on the cadence, and there's something off on the structure of the sentences, but it could be her. And then she's saying some kind of ludicrous shit. that she was 195 pounds, and friends wanted, and meanwhile they're beating that orange with that spoon, and your visual is cracked this way. You're paying attention to the familiar voice, you're absorbing the information, and they're splitting your mind because now you're hearing her say something you know cannot be true. If you ever saw Judge Judy, she wouldn't, with sand in her pocket, she wouldn't be 185 pounds. She didn't lose 50 pounds in 1 week, and all her friends are not asking her how she did it. But your mind is telling you, I need that product, and you want to stay past that 5-minute skip. Although every bit of common sense filter in your mind is going off. That's how they split your mind. It's not just neuro-linguistic programming. It's all the things all together. And that has progressed in 2023 from when they were complaining about just flashing a nice ice cold Coke during the movie so you'd get thirsty and want to go to the lobby and buy a hot dog or whatever. Subliminal.
I used to catch that all the time.
It's evolved amazing amounts, but they know how to split the parts of your brain. It is on so many levels. They are mind screwing you. You have no idea. So what do you think is going on here? We've got this interview. Nobody can say it better than Keel himself. It's about, I'm watching the clock. That's why I'm trying to talk real fast. We have just enough time to watch this and talk about it. And it's Keel himself in an interview. It's toward the end, there, Steve. It was 1997 he passed, was it? I have it in here to be sure.
2009, I think.
Okay, because I know he did an Art Bell interview, and it was the day the movie was released. The next day, the interview was the night before, and it was the first time he ever been on Bell's show. It's a fantastic interview, lots of details about the Mothman and a lot about the lights. And I felt like I didn't spend enough time on the lights, which is what Keel was really investigating quite a bit. So I thought that it would be good to put this up because he tells it in his own words. What could be better? You don't hear me yammering on. So within this interview, and I broke it up in a couple little parts, about 30 minutes, he talks about, of course, being a fringe journalist, the purple light, Steve, which I know is right up your dark little alley, and also the Flatwoods Monster, and a couple of other things that really surprised me here about how he pleaded with the local police there, and explains a little bit about, being a New Yorker in a small town in West Virginia, how far he got with that. But he really believed that something was going on here, very much so what Brian is talking about here, that there was an elevated energy that was causing people to act out and do very deep, dark things. Keel actually thought there was a serial killer that needed to be put in jail in a small town. So he talks about it here. We can talk over it. I'll stop it in 10-minute increments, and I'm going to get some hot water, guys. But this is so good. This is so good, this interview. Here we go. It's such a great pick right there. Y'all can hear that in the chat, right? Is that loud enough, guys? 5-5?
That's right.
Remember, Mary Klein never existed. Phil was never married, died a bachelor. Those red eyes, man. That is actually a part that happened. Phil took a phone call, and it was to Mr. Apol. And he told him his watch was in his shoe and he was holding chapstick. Blew him away. Messed with his head.
About a generation ago, and it gives me the shudders to think that it was a generation ago, I was running around the country, sitting up all night in cemeteries, and sitting on hilltops in remote parts of the country, looking for these funny lights in the sky that were everywhere in the 1960s. There was one hilltop in particular that overlooked the Ohio River, where at that time there was a lot of boat traffic on the Ohio River day and night. And these funny lights would come down out of the sky and circle around these boats that were transporting cargo up the Ohio River. And the boatmen would turn on their searchlights and play games with these lights. The lights would jump out of the way of the searchlights. And I was sitting on my hilltop watching these games going on. So, of course, eventually the lights came over to the hilltop where I was sitting. And I had a very powerful flashlight at that time. It had 6 cells in it. It was a long flashlight. It would shine for about a mile. And I would flash this flashlight at these funny lights, and they would jump out of the way of my flashlight. So it occurred to me to use Morse code and see if I could give them some commands, like descend, or go left, or go right. And so I'd flash in Morse code at these lights, and they would do whatever I ordered them to do. And then later, I decided that instead of using Morse code, I'd make up my own code and see what would happen. And so naturally, I was the only person in the universe that knew this code. And they knew this code, which gave me
That's incredible.
a lot of concern at the time.
That's because they're reading his mind.
So I would do simple things like
It's incredible.
I'd flash the flashlight in a circle for go right, and the object would go right. Or I'd flash it in a triangle, and it would go left, because that was my code, go left at the triangle. And I gradually figured out during this period that we could control these so-called flying saucers. They weren't saucers, they were lights. We should make that clear. There were no metallic objects involved with these lights. These were very bright lights. And they were everywhere during that period. One night I was sitting on this hilltop. I had a favorite hilltop outside of a little town called Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I was sitting alone in my car. Usually I had other people with me to watch me carry out these stupid things. And I was sitting alone, and one of these lights came down very close to my car and passed over, there was a wooded area all around me. These hills were all wooded hills. And it passed over these woods, and it seemed to descend right into the forest right next to my car. And I sat there for a few minutes. Now remember, I've been doing this for a long time already, and I was scared to death. I thought that somebody or something was going to come out of these woods and say, "Hello, John Keel, you want to take a ride?" Of course, this did not happen. But the next day, in those days I was staying in a motel on the other side of the river in Gallipolis, Ohio. And the next day when I woke up in my motel room there, my eyes were very sore, like they were full of sand. And this is a common effect of looking at these lights. It's called conjunctivitis.
I want to jump in here because when you say conjunctivitis, you think of one thing. You think of an infection and a bacterial infection. Your eye swells up and it gets pus and all this other, the goop. I want to say I believe it's more like from arc welding, a burn, and that feels like there's sand in your eyes because these people were burnt. Their skin was burnt. It was like a radiation burn, guys. What do you think?
Well, you're kind of on the target there. So it's partially radiation burn, but you have to understand is we only see in a certain area of the spectrum, and there are parts of the spectrum on both sides where we see that if you stare too long at them, it will give you like a radiation burn. It will burn the cornea of your eye and scab it up. We're very sensitive beings. We're not as evolved as we think we are. So these beings with the red eyes, when they start, the beings or the lights, they reacted to his flashlight, which really probably, I don't even know how many lumies it would be at this point. Probably not much than, like the weakest ones that we have today. It wasn't a big light, but they don't like the light. And it also affects their night vision. And their night vision on a different spectrum can, captivate you, burn you, like blind you. And who knows what other type of elements, infrasound or some other frequency that they may be giving off at certain levels of concentration.
Right, right.
That
And on top of
could
that,
screw
I
you up.
remember when Danny, my ex, he was welding. He didn't use a mask. I mean, you couldn't tell him
Oh
anything, and
God.
he was gonna do it. And I mean, by that night, it was like a sunburn, and that's how I didn't know about it, but it made sense. It was
Yeah.
just getting more intense as time went on, and
Right.
the way he described it was the way these people described their eyes. And this happened to Keel in his apartment in New York after he agreed to be a part of the movie. Steve, what about that?
And I don't believe in coincidence. I think that's a synchronicity.
There you go, my friend. There.
Well, he
Little
was big in
calling card dropped
synchronicity.
back. Yep.
He was big in synchronicity, which is really interesting. He was one of the first ones to be really big in it. And there are no coincidences. There are none.
I agree
It,
100%. Let's
you have to
finish this one out,
yeah,
and then we'll stop it. I've got about
sure.
5 more minutes on this one.
It's like looking into a bright arc light. And so the fact that my eyes were affected was proof that I had seen something there. So I went to the local police, and they came back with me to this hilltop. Now it's in broad daylight. And we went into that wooded area, and I half expected to see trees knocked over, something burned. I expected to find something in that wooded area. And I was very disappointed to find absolutely nothing, no trace of this
Hey,
thing that I had
Patient,
seen
love you,
right down
baby.
into the woods. There was no burned area, there was no limbs knocked off of trees. And I was very embarrassed because I had the police with me now. And they were running around with Geiger counters, and of course nothing was registering on the Geiger counter. So I had made a complete ass of myself once again, which of course is a major career of mine. Now, in the years 1964 to 1968, there was a worldwide epidemic of these lights. And I don't mean that it was an occasional light in the sky. They were everywhere, every damn night of the week. And you could name any town in Africa, or in France, or in China, people were seeing these lights. And some of these lights came down very close, like the one that I came down close to my car. And a lot of people were affected, the way I was affected, with burnt eyes. In one case, which I mentioned in one of my books, there was a young couple in a lover's lane doing things that people do in lover's lanes. And this thing came down next to their car, this very bright light. And the next day they were horrified to find that they were sunburned from head to foot because they didn't have clothes on. And this was very hard to explain because it was wintertime. And these two young people had a sunburn from being parked on the lover's lane. Some of you are probably old enough to remember that period, 64 to 68. There was a lot of things going on, the Vietnamese War and many other things. But these lights in the sky commanded a lot of attention in the press at that time. Time magazine did big editorials about it. The New York Times did front page stories about it. All of the newspapers were carrying articles about these funny lights. New Yorker magazine, which is usually too sophisticated to bother with such things, they carried a piece on it. And nobody, including the Air Force, knew what the hell these lights were. So I decided, at that time, I lived in New York City, but I was running all over the country. I had been assigned by Playboy magazine to find out what was going on. And so I was spending my own money, like water, to go back and forth to West Virginia, which was about 800 miles from New York, and to other places out on Long Island, and places in Ohio and Pennsylvania. And there were little towns where the people were afraid to go out at night because there were so many of these lights buzzing them. and the lights would chase their automobiles. There were lots of mysterious things going on with domestic animals. Dogs and cats were disappearing. One little town in Connecticut lost 700 dogs in a period of about a month. And you know, some of these dogs were not little poodles, they were big mastiffs, you know, dogs that you could not catch unless they wanted to be caught. And yet these dogs were vanishing and the cats were vanishing. We had animal mutilations of all kinds, cows, sheep, so on. Especially on Long Island. Now, you don't think of Long Island as having many animals, but they did have places out there. There was a farm at a college where they had cattle and other domestic animals. And something was butchering these animals inside their compounds at the college, somehow getting over very high fences and so on. Now, I realized that the best way to tackle this was to pick one or two spots and make them a microcosm of the whole thing, and just study everything in that spot. Learn to know the people, study every event that happened, whether it was related to these things or not. Call them UFOs, but that's really not a good name for them. They were like living lights. These lights had an intelligence of their own. In one case, there was an orchard in West Virginia where I was parked there, and I saw in the orchard, and I had other people with me in the car at the time, I saw some purple lights in the orchard, high in the trees. There were about 6 or 8 of these purple lights, each one about the size of a beach ball. And you could see right through these lights. They were almost transparent. They were transparent, but they were purple. So I walked into this field, into the orchard, and these lights came to meet me. And they formed a circle around me and did like a dance around me. And the people who were in the car waiting for me were scared out of their wits. And while they were watching me dance with these lights, they could do a movie, The Man Who Danced with Purple Lights. While I'm dancing with these purple lights, these ladies who were in my car from the local newspaper, they said that somebody came up behind the car, and this is a very isolated area. There are no people there, and it's the middle of the night.
This is
Somebody
amazing.
came up to the car, and at first they thought somehow it was me. And then they realized I was still out in the field dancing with the lights. And somebody or something came up behind the car, and then they really got scared. And they wanted to get the hell out of there. And of course they had to wait till I came back from my dance with the lights. Now I went to that particular orchard several times that year. This is in the year 1966. And I saw these purple lights several times. And they always behaved the same way, except if I turned on my flashlight, then they would skitter out of the way of the light. The light beam was like a solid object to them, and they would get the hell out of the way of the light, just as the boatmen would flash their searchlights at them. As I say, these lights were everywhere, and now down in the valley from the hilltop, there was a whole forest, a rather large, thick forest. And one night, when I was up there on my hilltop, I looked down and the whole forest had turned purple. There was a purple light, a purple glow to the entire forest. And I went, the next day, I went to talk to the farmer who the forest was on his land. And I asked him about this. And he said, yeah, that happens every once in a while, that the forest turns purple on us. And he said that he had a dog that once ran into the forest when it was purple, and the dog never came back. And he'd lived on this farm all of his life. He'd inherited it from his parents, of course. And he said he never went near the forest when it was purple because there was something very wrong at that time. Very weird.
How about that, Mr. Stockton? Ain't that crazy?
Yeah, what about that? I wouldn't go in it.
Don't go into Purple Forest, Stockton. Don't do it.
Don't eat the yellow snow.
Anyway.
Exactly. I love the man. I love the man.
Oh, he was
I
fun.
really do. I love it.
I had dinner with him. It was like a dream come true, but he didn't really talk a lot. He was just, he kind of rumbles by it.
He was something else because I liked him on once you get past the whole point of uh Letterman being Letterman and all that other
Yeah.
stuff and getting mad and going, you don't realize who you're sitting next to, what this man knows and the depths that he can go and how many cemeteries he's sat all night by himself with a flashlight. Now, before we lose it, I want to go back and ask you guys a couple things. Have you heard anything about Keel so far that you didn't know? I didn't know about the purple lights. I hadn't heard about the purple lights. Had you?
I hadn't heard that part.
I knew about the purple lights. I
You
knew about the
did?
purple lights. Yeah. I knew about
And
the
the
purple lights.
forest and the forest turning purple. If you go in the forest when it's purple, you don't come back. That kind of
The
thing. That's
forest,
crazy.
yeah, the forest turning purple.
That's
The
crazy.
effect of the lights on his eyes.
Mhm.
The one thing I didn't know about Keel was, what he did. I didn't know about him writing for Hollywood and TV and movie. I mean,
Yeah.
a separate. It's almost like two split personalities.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know,
Well, again, sitting at the table talking to himself in the
yeah,
movie,
I mean, this is
portrayed yet again.
it's always interesting learning about people because
I
that
know
does
it's
give you an idea
fascinating. It's freaking
about that. But
fascinating. I
something was
can't thank
interesting is,
Steve enough.
yeah, Jack Kilowatt asked, am I suggesting that when they played around with the colliders, they're creating rips in time space? Yeah, they
Yeah.
are.
Yes.
And
It's like asking, did who killed Kennedy?
right.
CIA, Secret Service, aliens. Oh gosh, we got to talk about not
And
on
then,
this show because we don't have time, but
yeah.
we'll do another one about aliens killed Kennedy. It's fascinating,
And
fascinating. I
well,
assure you,
on this, so when
it's
they
crazy.
take timelines, they're doing things that they're playing around with stuff they don't know what they're doing with it, and it's creating a reaction or a blow up, not only on our timeline, but
I
where
don't
there's
blame you,
multiple
baby.
timelines, multiple areas, right? Multiple dimensions too. And when it rejoins, we're getting part of our old timeline back to the new timeline. Now there are people like CERN that are doing that with timelines, and they're trying to facilitate something, and I'm going to say it, evil. And there are other people that are now saying no, and they're playing, and there's a lot of this
Oh,
going back and forth.
yeah,
Turn the
I
lights
saw
on.
their Satan dance going on before
Okay,
they opened it.
but
Look, I
here's
ain't stupid. Do not piss on my leg and tell me it's raining.
so
I'm
the
just
first
so done with that
collider,
bullshit.
right? The first
Gaslight,
collider is in Firm Lab, but here's something, and I think Steve, you're gonna love this, and Sysco, you're gonna love this. I'm going real deep. Okay, I've just researched some of it, but all the black-eyed kids, all the shadow people,
Yep,
the Mothman,
all of that
possible.
stuff.
The Jersey Devil I think, is really more of an interdimensional, like the Mothman, or a
There's
human
something
flying.
there, but that story
Okay,
don't flush with me. I'm sorry.
and the black-eyed kids.
Mhm.
These
The
events take
sounds,
place.
Bowden.
What?
The freaking sounds, the booms coming in, the breaking of the
It's
barriers,
besides that.
It's
Right.
not only that, it's the metal doors they're hearing in the woods, and these people are disappearing. It's all of
There's
this. It's
because there's portals.
they're breaking
It's
some
thinner.
kind
The
of a
veil is really thinner. They're opening
yeah.
up portals and coming in. But here's the thing: if you look at where these black-eyed kids sightings are, they are extremely close to universities, and almost every university, at least at one point, it was just 200. There are more. Every university has
Oh,
some
so
form
many.
of a
So
collider.
many things. Everything's turning up to 11. Everything's turned up to
Okay.
11. And Bowden knows that when we start talking about those guys, the stories on the kid, the one that gets me too. I mean, there's so many, but the black-eyed kid in the back of the car, mom goes in for milk at the convenience store, comes out, there's another kid sitting next to her kid, and she doesn't know what to do. She's trauma sets in, and stuff goes down at the quick check. So eventually the kid gets out of the car. The other kid disappeared. Well, he wanted to come play to the house or whatever, and she's losing her mind, and the kid disappears anyway. She gets her kid out of the car. That kid winds up getting sick. They're going to the hospital, the doctors, the specialists. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with him. All of this happens with the black-eyed kids. Every time Steve
They're
tells
feeding
his
off the-
encounter, stuff falls off the walls, electronic tech stuff. It's crazy. And I'm telling you, the similar with The Mothman, similar. Look, there's a whole
Mothman?
lot more than a man in a suit or a bird man that just happens to be there, or some toxic
Check this out.
mutation. It's something with power because he stands next to shit. Listen, and it burns.
Here it is.
People look at it and their eyes go on fire, Bowden.
This is the reason why. This is why
Fire.
Bigfoot sees stuff. Like if anybody's ever had a baby and they had a baby monitor, which is really bizarre. I feel like
Creepy.
a prison guard when I did.
So creepy.
The room is pitch black, but you can see the baby's
Not
crib.
against them, but they're creepy.
Okay, you can see the baby's crib. These creatures that, and I believe Bigfoot and Dogman have multiple eyes, filters, and they can see in the daytime as well as the night. They just flip their eye, gets into the tapia,
Seatbelt lights
kind
going
of like
by.
the lemur, right? So what happens is they are seeing the infrared spectrum that they see through and they operate in is right next to the microwave spectrum. And go microwave, it's called the Havana syndrome. It melts your flesh. It will melt your eye lens. It gets into your body. And when you are subjected to something that's pulling on your essence and then subjugating you to microwaves and infrared, your organs are going to be black. You're going to be spitting up black.
They were peeing black. They were in a little town in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The Mothman rolled in. What date did he roll in? Let's be clear. November 15th, 1966. He stayed 13 months and left. Last seen there, not global, just there. December 15th, 1967.
Who's his realtor?
It's absolutely, yeah. And listen, 13 months, 13th pin on the bridge, Steve, that broke. Listen, you can roll that any which way you want. You want to sit on the fence. Look, if it broke at the pin, I don't care if a brick flew out or if a cord broke or whatever. It doesn't mean that the Mothman wasn't there. I'm not saying he did it. I'm personally just a theory, and I'm a novice at this, so it could, that mileage could vary, like Steve says. So, I'm at the time right now, I'm thinking it knew it was going to happen.
Yep.
I don't think it caused it, but it knew it. And it's the 13th pin on the bridge. Yeah, it was old. Yeah, it was rickety. Yeah, there was a lot of traffic, but there was one thing that happened that convinces me such. Both lights turned red and held there. So all the weight of that
would be
that traffic, that Christmas traffic, everything else, people with the Christmas packages, the mayor's parents, kids, coming back from choir practice and Christmas, what do you call that, pageants and all that stuff. It's the saddest thing ever. 46 died. You can't tell me for 13 days people are having penetration in their dream. Well, careful how I say that. They're getting their dreams penetrated. They're getting their dreams penetrated while they sleep, ladies and gentlemen, and getting these thoughts put in their head. And then they wake up and they're getting ready for work, shave and whatnot, and hearing on the news that the plane did crash and 300 did die. Steve.
Yeah.
So, I think
and this stuff and the Flatwoods Monster
Flatwoods Monster was, they exaggerated that and put the press put the body and all that stuff. Flatwoods Monster was like a cylinder of light and two red eyes.
Well, let's see what Keel has to say about it. We'll see what he's going to tell us. I was surprised to hear this, Steve, and I was so glad to get it for you. I was like, Steve's going to love this. It's right up your dark little alley. Here we go.
In 1952, something fell out of the skies, which became known as the Flatwoods Monster. Most of you have probably heard about this or read about the Flatwoods Monster.
Love it, love it, love it.
This light, it looked like a comet, came out of the sky and landed on a hilltop outside of this little village of Flatwoods, which is just a tiny cluster of houses. And a group of young people, I can't call them teenagers because some of them were over 20, they decided to go up the hilltop up the top of the hill and investigate this, whatever crashed on the top of the hill. So they climbed up the hill, and they were accompanied by a little dog that belonged to one of them. When they got near the top of the hill, they were struck by a terrible smell. Now, normally in these cases, the smell is described like rotten eggs, which means hydrogen sulfide. But this was not the smell of hydrogen sulfide. This smelled, the best way they could describe it, was smelled like grease hitting hot metal. And it was very, very potent, whatever it was. The dog was the smarter of the group, the smarter person in the group. The dog turned around and went back down the hill. One of the young men in the group, his name was Lemon, he fainted dead away. Now, his friends they were all scared out of their, they were all wetting their pants, let's face it. They had to now carry their fainted comrade down the hill. But before they left, around the tree, a light came. And this light had two big red lights on it, like two big red eyes. And then it was like a beam of light. And this is what became the Flatwoods Monster. Now, these people were so scared and so busy that they really didn't get a chance to get a good look at it. So the newspaper accounts later filled in the details. And they gave it arms and legs and a spade-shaped head, and it became the Flatwoods Monster. Ivan Sanderson, who was a good friend of mine, a British zoologist, read about this in the newspapers. This, by the way, the story made the papers all over the country. It was carried by the wire services. Ivan was there in less than a week, and he talked to all the witnesses. He went up to the hilltop, and he couldn't find any trace of any object or any burn marks or anything. Now, the people who went up there originally said that there was an oily substance on the grass at the hill, on the top of the hill, but that had all evaporated. There was nothing left. The little dog ran down the hill, as I said, and got very sick. He threw up because the dog was closest to the ground and probably got the biggest whiff of this gas, whatever it was. The dog died a couple of days later. Now, if I had been there, I would have had an autopsy performed on the dog to find out what was in his lungs. But that was never done, so we don't know. We never identified this gas. And we never identified whatever this object was. But 1952 was a strange year for objects falling from the sky, as you know. Now, in that same area, we're talking about a place called Braxton County. And in that same immediate area, they were also seeing tall, hairy monsters, our Bigfoot. And Bigfoot usually stinks like hell. He usually does smell of hydrogen sulfide. And sometimes you can smell Bigfoot half an hour before he shows up.
Something very interesting about the lights in the 50s, late 50s. Do you guys remember when when all these missile silos were being visited by Kraft and they were being shut down? It was the late 50s, early 60s. We have a multitude of different things taking place here. We have interdimensional, ultra-dimensional, different type of timeline beings in here. We have light beings which do exist. There are light beings that have come here for years. Then you have UFOs in light form, and then you have these beings that are light beings that literally appear like orbs or dancing fairies. There's a whole variety of what they would classify as extraterrestrials, but they're more than that. The last count is probably close to 400 different type of, I'm going to use the term races or species. And it's not just your regular, something you see in the cantina of Star Wars.
Right.
You have all those, and then you have
It's
things
scary.
that are just like, it's a shimmering being, kind of like the Predator. Then you have,
and you've got all these people too bringing in all this demon stuff. I mean, they're not even hiding it anymore, guys. They're calling them left, right, and center, and you can watch it happen. And I think the thing that's finally breaking the spell that's breaking. And I want to get down too far down this road, but I just want to say this: the spell is breaking because you're talking about a bunch of people that with just a few things and a little push would stand 6 feet apart from someone, knowing that the human sneeze goes between 25 and 30 some odd feet, depending on the person, of course, varies. However, why 6 feet? It's a spell. It's a conditioning. It's a spell. And the spells, like I was talking about with ads and stuff like that, that actually go so deep, it splits your brain off, which sends you off in a whole nother direction and are able to absorb what they're putting down. And that's how it works. That little simple thing, what else do you think they're doing? And I
So
think Keel was really tapping into um, quite a bit of it. And I don't know, Steve, do you think that it kind of drove him a little nuts at the end of his life?
I think so. I mean, it definitely had its effect. And there's another author out there named Andrew Colvin who published, he grew up in Point Pleasant. He published a book called The Mothman's Photographer. And he had like thousands of hours interviewing people, including Keel, about what was going on there. And then he had art and photography based on that. But he seemed to think that they were some kind of beings that, let me find it here, or if I can.
He had been.
So when
Yeah,
you were
he said
saying
that his theory,
Hang on
personal
just a
theory,
second.
that the Birdmen, such as Mothman, Garuda, and the Thunderbird, are actually archetypical crime-fighting superheroes from the collective unconscious. The job of these avatars is to send dreams, visions, and psychic messages to ordinary humans, thus stimulating insight, creativity, and intellectual growth. Now, he's trying to see the good in these things, but I don't think they had that much good in them. I think they
No, I
had
think they
more.
have their own damn agenda, dude. And
Yeah.
and the stuff, like I said too, the bringing in the demons, what Brian is saying too about they're actually manipulating. Of course they
Yeah.
are. They're manipulating the weather. They're manipulating everything. But there is an agenda of to bring this evil in. And the one thing that
Yes.
makes it continue on is because people think nobody could be that evil. Stop saying that to yourself. It's
Well,
hard to imagine how bad people can be because you're not like that. You're a light worker, whatever. But here's the thing. Good light workers walk into the darkness and come out and go, whoa, I'm going to need a rest before I do that again. And that's shaman. That's basic stuff there. There's
yeah,
no way you can realize how strong your light is and how bright your light is until you've actually faced some darkness. And that's how a warrior is built. And that's what a lot of people are going through now. You notice it, how strong, you're getting and how things that used to bother you are kind of bouncing off now and go, that's nothing. I just heard this, and this, that's nothing.
right.
It's just like a focus. It's almost like you got to be a ballerina and pick a point. What's your point? And focus on that and let it all go around. It's like I was saying last night, eye of the storm, like these tornadoes, and look at what was going on. It was insane. So listen, we've got about 15 more minutes on this one. And I want to make sure I hear everything everybody's got to say. But this next one is kind of important because I had never seen this or thought about this before. This was a level, if I'm not mistaken, that I didn't know until I heard Keel say it himself about this town and the area. And if you're wondering if what we're saying is true, this is just another way of saying the same thing each one of us is saying in our own way. And what you guys are saying in the chat, that there's something going on in this spot. For whatever reason, it was a perfect storm of energy and meddling and chicanery and ancient stuff
It's like
and
you were
ley lines,
saying,
everything.
with the operations going on in bigger cities, it's not as easily noticed as it would be in a
Exactly.
smaller town. So maybe that's why I
And-
seen all these winged humanoids in Chicago and things in the
Yes.
recent years.
Keel being such a traveler, he did a book all
Yeah.
about the different areas, hotspots around the world,
To
called ley
connect the
lines,
dots.
where all the crap is coming from. Now, the
And
reason
to
why they want
connect
to
the
keep you
dots.
6 feet from each other, besides the spell, is because we're all electric and we all have a certain frequency. And when you're too close together, they can't determine who you are. So they
Yeah.
need to be able to see you the eye in the
It's
sky. Or
all
whatever.
of these things. It's all of these things
Yeah.
at the same time. And that's, I think, what causes the arguments in the paracons and the seminars and the stuff and the things. And again, it's intent and, is it ego? Is it this? Is it that? Whatever all the things. But when it boils down to this is what causes the arguments, because people realize if mine is true, yours can't be true. And I don't think that's true. I think
Yeah.
all of these things can be true at the same time because I'm starting to see them mesh. And this right here blew my mind. Again, I hope I got the right thing, but this is he was getting more, something even stranger than what you've heard already. And Steve, I had never heard that he did with the lights, with the Morse code. That
Yep.
makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that they would be able to answer it back, which is as wild as it sounds. It's easy to accept. Yet he made his own code, told no one, and they knew it.
And they still knew it. Yeah.
They
This is
knew
the
it.
same
Steve.
thing that
Sentient beings there.
Absolutely.
what happens with UFO people that are there are people aliens can actually talk to you telepathically. They can read
what
your
else
mind and
can?
your thought.
And
And
what
this
else
is why
can?
sometimes you have people like Steve and I'll be hanging out and Sysco will be
Yeah.
like, look at that freaking craft, and we're not in
Exactly.
that frequency.
And what else has it? Dogmen, spirits, ghosts,
Dogman,
sometimes,
Bigfoot has
depending
it.
on their energy. All of
There's a
them.
lot of
All
them.
of them. And you're
It's a
starting to
defense
see that now.
mechanism.
And they all have, at certain times and certain sightings, the red eyes. And just like
Yeah.
my first ghost memory, I said it last night, first ghost memory ever, the flying head coming at me was red eyes. And then I'd see him again in different vibration, in different, his mindset, where he was more pleading, and I could see his eyes. They were sad, or they were, like I said, pleading or startled. I could say that, but not red. So when he was angry. So again, think about this. This is crazy. And it's just another similarity that they don't want you to know about. And I want you to think about what I said last night too. The metal door sliding. The
Yep.
guy who saw the sheriff, ex-sheriff who saw the dog man, heard the metal door. It didn't belong in the woods. The sound did not belong in the woods. Where have you heard it before? David Paulides, Hunter's missing 411. The hunter that went missing, his friend heard the door, the metallic door. And I've heard it twice before. And I don't know if anybody else has heard it from a different source. Yep, Steve. Yes, Bri. See,
Yep.
again, and again, it's a sound. It's the boom that people hear right before the Black Eyed Kids show up or leave. It's all of
unnerving
this.
when you're in the
all.
woods and you hear it.
It's all.
When you,
It's
yeah,
all.
when you're in
The
woods.
birds stop singing. The void
Oh,
in
yeah.
the woods, the sound, that gets sucked out. It's crazy. And I know that to be true. My whole life, I've listened to nature, and when the birds get quiet, I wonder where the predator is, and I listen. And I wait for the different ones to tell you. You've got your own kind of, guards out there. All right, I'm going to hit the button or we're not going to make it. So here we go. Here's more Akil. Pay attention to this. This is crazy. Crazy. In a delightful, delicious way. It really is.
So this area had a history of peculiar monster sightings and all. I should also mention that in Flatwoods in 1952, no government agent or Air Force agent or anybody like that ever bothered to come around. The story got extensive publicity in the papers. A lot of people came and questioned the witnesses, but they were mostly the UFO buffs of that period. And they never had any Air Force representatives or government representatives come and question them. Now, we'll skip ahead a little bit. I made Point Pleasant, West Virginia, sort of my headquarters in '66, and then fanned out to the rest of West Virginia, investigating all these various things. And it was my procedure in those days. It still is if I do these things, although it's gotten very expensive to do these kind of trips. My first step in arriving in a strange town, a new town, was always to go to the police station and introduce myself to the police, because especially in West Virginia, of course, I'm a Yankee, and in those days I carried a pile of press credentials. I was writing in newspaper columns and so on. So I would introduce myself to the police so that they knew I was just another harmless nut. And My second step was to go to the local newspaper and introduce myself there. And they always, large and small, the newspaper men always wanted to interview me, and I always turned them down. I didn't want anything in the papers about me. I wanted just to know what was happening there. So my third step would then be to find a local historian. Now, every town, even a town of 500 people, has somebody who fancies himself the local historian of the town. Sometimes it's the local doctor. Most often it's a local librarian. But often
My
it's
sister's
just
that
a
person in
stringer
Wall,
for
New
a
Jersey.
newspaper or the local gossip. But there's always somebody in that town who calls himself the local historian. So those are the three contacts I would make first before I would go out and talk to witnesses and such. I would always ask the police my usual list of peculiar questions, and I still do this, and they always act astonished. One of my questions was, has anybody been killed by lightning here lately? Now it doesn't happen very often. It happens about 800 times a year worldwide.
How about this? How about this is wild.
Whenever I asked these police in these towns where they were having a lot of UFO sightings, their mouths would drop and they'd say, my God, how'd you know? Just last week, somebody got killed by a lightning bolt. As I say, it's a very unusual occurrence. In one town in Ohio, I arrived at the police station just as they were bringing in a body that they had just picked up that had been killed by a lightning bolt. So this was an odd link to all this, that there was something electrical going on in these towns. In West Virginia and in Ohio, there was somebody, you remember this is 30 years ago now, times have changed now so that this is not uncommon today, but it was uncommon then. 30 years ago, somebody was chasing around West Virginia and Ohio in an old automobile, harassing young ladies in their cars, trying to drive them off the road and so on. And
This is crazy. It's where it starts getting really crazy.
Probably a man in his 30s is wearing a fright wig. And he was always driving what looked like a car that was 10 or 15 years old, but kept in very good condition. So it didn't take me long to figure out that there was somebody like a serial rapist on the loose in that area. And I would approach my friends at the different police departments and say, hey, I've heard these stories. There's a maniac on the loose here. And they'd always poo-poo it. They'd say, oh, no, Keel, these women are making things up, or what. And they would ignore these stories. And I warned them that there was something out of the ordinary going on, that there was one person in that area who should be probably arrested. Also, Gray Barker, who lived in West Virginia, came across some of these stories on his own.
They wouldn't
In
listen.
Braxton County, young people were
They never
disappearing
do.
in large numbers. These were mostly young men below the age of 20, and they would be hitchhiking to, say, a local cinema or something, and just disappear off the face.
This is up your alley there, Steve. All those missing
I
hitchhikers.
told the police that there were too many of these disappearances, that they had a maniac on the loose. And again, the police were always assured me that I was wrong and I was an out-of-towner, and what did I know?
That's crazy. That's crazy. The energy in the area.
In November of 1966, 4 young people in a car, an all broken down car, were driving through the local Lover's Lane, an area that was called the TNT area, because during the Second World War, there was a TNT plant there. Actually, it's more complicated than that. They were making parts for atom bombs there, but that's a long, involved story. Anyway,
Like I said earlier.
there was an old building in there that they called the power plant. It was a building that housed
Yep.
generators for these TNT factories. And they were driving past this building, and they saw what looked like a very large man, 6 or 7 feet tall, standing next to this power plant. And for some reason, he scared the death out of them. They were all scared to death. So the boy who was driving hit the accelerator, and they drove out of there at a high speed. And looking back, this thing rose up in the air and followed their car. And they were going over 60 miles an hour on these dirt roads, and this thing was flying right along with them. So they drove straight to the police station. Now you have to realize in small towns, teenagers do not go to the police station voluntarily. But they were so scared, they went to the police and reported this. And the police were so convinced by their behavior that they held a press conference the next day. And reporters from the local newspapers, from Charlotte and other cities around there, came to hear this very bizarre story of this flying man. And the four teenagers gave
Hey, honey, how you
this
doing?
account of it. And the newspapers, at that time, Batman was very popular on television. So the newspapers labeled this creature Mothman. And that was the beginning of the Mothman caper, I guess you'd call it. Now, as luck would have it, I was in West Virginia, in a place called Beckley, West Virginia, where I was investigating the case of a cat with wings.
There it is, Steve.
This cat had become
It's great.
a national celebrity. It had wings, and at that time Dave Garroway was doing the Today Show, and he flew the boy who owned the cat and the cat to New York, and they appeared on television. And then shortly afterwards, a woman in the area claimed that the cat was named Thomas, by the way, claimed that the cat was really her cat. And then the wings fell off, and then she said, oh no, that's not my cat. And the boy charged 10 cents a person. So if you wanted to take a look at this cat, it would cost you 10 cents. So everybody thought the boy was getting rich. He probably made all of $2 or $3 out of this.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Anyway, I was investigating, fearlessly investigating the winged cat when
Gotta
the
make money.
Mothman story broke. And so I went up to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and that was the beginning of that whole thing. In the next year, there were over 100 reports of this Mothman. Some of the people who reported seeing this thing
Yep.
were not only adults, they were responsible adults. Like
That's what you call substantial there.
and, local officials.
Substantial.
The lady who was sort of the head of the Chamber of Commerce. A lot of people saw this, and in my book, which we already have no copies of, in my book I give a table of some of the 100 reports that we collected. Now, every time I would go back to New York to try to figure out how to make a living, my phone would ring and something new would happen in West Virginia, and I'd have to turn around and go back all the way 800 miles back to West Virginia.
Good Lord. Isn't that amazing?
And,
He did it
came,
many times.
and there was a lot of snow on the ground. There were no footprints for this Mothman. And some of these people had seen this creature walking around and making strange noises. But it didn't leave footprints in the snow. It didn't leave any physical matter like fecal matter or anything that I could pick up and have analyzed. And all of the descriptions pretty much matched. Except some people said the eyes were blazing red eyes. And most people said they couldn't see the face at all. It would be
Fascinating.
dark, and they'd just see
Fascinating.
this giant figure come bearing down on them. And then they'd see it fly away. Some of the people that I talked to, when I talked to them in depth, it was obvious that they had been in a kind of a trance state when they saw this creature. I mentioned a banker had seen it. Well, what happened to the banker was he heard a noise, and he went out on his front porch, and he stood there for 20 minutes. And his wife was inside watching television. And finally, 20 minutes later, he staggered into the house. And she said he looked like he had seen a ghost. He was pale and shaking. And he didn't realize 20 minutes had passed. And he claimed that during those 20 minutes, during that period when he was outside, this creature was standing on his lawn staring at him. And he couldn't move. Well, to make a really long and complicated story short, in the Christmas season of 1967,
Here we go.
Point Pleasant, West Virginia, there was a bridge called the Silver Bridge that crossed the Ohio River. And on December 15th, 1967, that bridge collapsed, and it was loaded down with cars, people who had been Christmas shopping, trucks. It was an old rickety bridge. Every time I drove across it, I was scared. It was shaking so. And a lot of people, over 50 people, died in that collapse of that bridge. And that sort of put a damper on all my investigations. Because I knew some of the people who had gone down with the bridge.
You can
Some
tell
of
it
these
still
people were
bothers him.
Mothman witnesses. And
You could tell.
I was very shaken up by all of this. Because, as you can imagine, everybody in the town at Point Pleasant was very upset by this. And so I did just one magazine article on the whole subject, and it was a short article. It was about 2,000 words. And it was published in Saga magazine. And I decided that I wouldn't write any more about it because of the disaster. Now, other people were collecting the clippings and all on Mothman too, and they were lecturing about Mothman. They were running around and writing about Mothman, and you know most of their names. There were Lauren Coleman, Jerry Clark, Jim Mosley went on a lot of TV shows to talk about Mothman.
Sound familiar, boys? Sounds familiar.
Ray Barker, who lived in West Virginia, wrote and published a book about it in 1970 called The Silver Bridge. But I published nothing on it. I gave one talk on the radio about it, on Long John Neville's show. And that was the extent of my involvement. Now today, when you pick up any encyclopedia of the strange or anything, it always says that John Keel is the center of the Mothman thing. And one of the newspapers in West Virginia did a long editorial against me, saying that I was exploiting the situation and making a big profit from it. Of course, little do they know, I made no profit at all from it.
Sounds about right.
I'm still not making a profit from it. Get out there and buy those books. Now, my book came out in 1975, and that was the year that the police in West Virginia discovered a cave filled with bodies. Because the animals and all had been in there, and the bodies had been rotting for a long time, this is the thing we're not eating now, they couldn't tell how many bodies there were, but they think there were 20 or 30 bodies in that cave. So I was right about a serial killer on the loose there.
Yes, Trusty.
And
Here it comes. Serial killer.
stickier. The police, after a rather short investigation, dropped the whole thing.
What's going on?
When you're dealing with small-town police, are there any small-town police here ready to give me the business?
That's why.
The
Exactly.
reason our suicide rate in the United States is so high is because they often put murders down as suicide in small towns because they don't want a murder on the book, unsolved murder on the books.
Yep.
And very often they know who committed the murder, but they figure, well, he deserved getting murdered, so we'll just forget about it. It seems like everyone in West Virginia knows who this killer was.
He ain't lying.
And I wouldn't dare give his name here, but
Oh, I got a serial killer
thing. Prominent family in West Virginia, and the reason that they know is that he was put away for a while in a mental institution, and while he was in the mental institution, all of the disappearances and all stopped. Then when he was released from the mental institution, they started.
Surprise!
Now I don't have a latest report on that. I don't know if those are still going on, or if this fellow is still on the loose. I hope he's not.
It's deep, man. I'm telling you.
They probably took care of it. You know, paid him a visit.
And it was better. It was, what would be the term? It was smarter of me to stay out of it.
Small town justice can be very, very good.
A lot of things are still going on in West Virginia. I still get mail from a lot of people down there, some of the people that I knew 30 years ago. Now, also one of the mysteries that I tried to untangle and found hopeless was that there were a number of babies born during that period to young women there.
Here it comes, guys.
These babies seemed to be rather unusual. And after the babies were born, they were surrounded by poltergeist activity, which you've been hearing about today. And other odd things were going on with these babies, so I kept in touch with some of these families. I wondered if perhaps when these children grew up, there might be something special about them. Well, the children have grown up, and there really doesn't seem to be anything special about them. But I did keep in touch with some of them all those years. Now, maybe John Michel will mention, maybe he won't, a phenomenon that's going on in England right now with the phantom social workers. Any of you heard about that? Well, there are people, ordinary
This is
people,
bananas.
going around to homes in England claiming to be social workers, and they want to examine the children in the family.
Bananas.
And they have never harmed any of these children. And in many cases, the families get suspicious and call the cops, especially since this has been getting publicity. Nobody knows who these phantom social workers are or what their motives are. And it's not just 2 or 3 people. The descriptions vary. It's tall people, short people, fat people, thin people, all posing as social workers. But we had something very similar in West Virginia.
Scariest stuff I ever heard.
Except they would go to the homes of these families, especially the families that I was concerned with.
Not as scary as this girl.
And they would want to take pictures of the newborn children. And they would promise that they would give free pictures to these families. So the family said, sure. But a lot of the West Virginia families couldn't afford to have pictures taken anyway. And so these photographers, sometimes they would arrive in a very expensive car, and sometimes they would arrive in Volkswagens. And they would take pictures of these babies and then drive away. It made no sense at all. They never did mail the pictures.
Is that not crazy?
So I was chasing these phantom photographers at one point.
It's insane.
And I missed some of them by minutes. And to this day, I don't know what their game was. But I put them in the same category as our phantom social workers in England. Incidentally, the British magazine 14 Times has carried a series of articles about the phantom social workers. What time is my time up to? 2 minutes? Oh.
Listen to what he says.
I have at least 3 hours of material. I'll close by saying that right now, in the last month, up in the Albany, New York area, we've had a minor UFO flap, again of these lights in the sky. And there have been quite a few reports out of that area. And there doesn't seem to be anything special happening up there. I haven't gone out there myself, but it just is another UFO wave. And of course, when the UFO buffs talk about this, they always call them craft, spacecraft. But God damn it, they're lights. They're intelligent lights. And it's very rare that a metallic object is ever seen. And if you go through the 500,000 reports that have now been printed, you'll find very few discs in comparison to the lights, discs and metallic objects listed. But these lights will remain a big mystery. And I've spent 30 years chasing them, and I've never caught one, so I don't know what the hell they are. I'll close with that.
Sounds like us, huh, guys?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Fabulous individual. I absolutely love him. I'm so glad I got introduced to him. So glad I dug around in the Mothman and Indrid Cole and Mr. Apol and everything that's going on in this town. And it's so deep. It's so many levels, you know.
Oh, the hell with it. Road trip, everybody. Someone
Hey,
picked up
listen.
Steve on the way down.
Craziest thing, we were looking at land and I just pulled up, you know, hey, you know, what's an acre of land going for in this, you know, in this county in West Virginia, just to see. First thing that pops up, probably because I was talking about it, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And there's a plot, really reasonable. And you start looking at the pictures, and right out your front door, the bridge. I'm like, nope. Big bag of nope. There's obviously something going on there, man. You know, and just like this gift says, it's like we've made it cute and funny and legend like we do with a lot of stuff, but I think it's one of the scariest things I've ever heard. I mean, people peeing black,
It's really
their
it's
eyes
unreal.
being burned. Kids, I don't know. What do y'all want to
It's
say?
it's a multiple layer cake, and we're not
Absolutely.
even touching. I mean, we're getting close to certain subjects, but we're not even
I know.
broaching it. That
I know.
man right up there where I'm pointing,
Yes.
give him some time, and he'll go in there, and there'll be like 3 books coming out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve
I mean,
Stockton presents
the
a
point is
layer
there's
cake.
something going on everywhere. Like Keel was saying, Steve. He's saying at this point in time, from whatever, from Kendall Can't, there all these lights were being seen, all these reports, and how many of our friends, how many people we've talked to, how many conversations you guys amongst us all. I mean, sitting here, it's an astronomical number. I can't even fathom of how many people we've talked to over our journey and heard the same type of things, and it's all meshing together. Are you guys feeling the same, Steve?
Yeah,
How many channels and missing
absolutely.
people?
It's connected. It's all connected, folks.
Yeah, there's a lot of connection there. I just go and research, and you said something on the other episode where so I have all these hypotheses, and I write all these different things down, and then you have an experience, and you're like, oh crap, scratch that, put that to the side. You got to move this one up, reliver. It's an onion. You're peeling the onion, and you just keep going and going down the rabbit hole. And sometimes you want to be a little bit cheeky, and you throw some people down the rabbit hole with you, and it can get pretty funky.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree, and it's just like is in this. We went through the movie. I think again, it's kind of like a metaphor for the paranormal for me, and what Brian just said and what Steve said. It's it's like your vantage point and what your consciousness is willing to absorb and the way you absorb it. I started to think of different things, like people get so much from visuals and things like that. When I first saw this and walked into this movie, I'm like, what do you mean you were knocking at the door at 2:30 and you've been doing it for 3 days in a row? And he takes off and winds up, doesn't realize he just drove 800 miles, loses time. Of
Yeah.
course, none of that happened, but things just as wild did, And again, it's one of those things, like I said, with like a paranormal metaphor, because when people are telling ghost stories and reenacting them, the extra drama, the extra jump scares, all the extra visuals that these people never said they saw. It's just all for that mind, meld. And I think that's one of the reasons we try to reach back to these original reports, the original people talking about the JFK shooting. The first books that came out from witnesses before they were all, unlived. You know what I mean? People, witnesses that saw this, and you could see that in the documentaries. The people, and I've watched them pretty much pass. They started with a documentary close to it's been a long time, 67.
Yeah.
So my lifetime. And they've, of course, passed along the way and grown older or whatever. But this one lady sat down that I've seen in so many of the documentaries, and she said it well. When we sit at the table now at the Mothman Festival every September, guys, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, she said the witnesses that are still here are telling the same story they told back in the 70s, the same story they told at the cafeteria down in the 90s. It's just that now we sit down and nothing has changed, because we're telling the truth. And the depths of the things that happened during these times, the people saw stuff missing. Not just one person had these phone calls that would be high frequency, Bri.
Yep.
The electronics and the white noise and the weird voices. And of course, they packed all that together. Like Steve and I said, the Indrid Cole and the Mr. Apple, and I hear there was several others. But how this man wasn't driven crazy, Steve, in his apartment, kind of reclusive, with all the books all around him, and still having effects of this area, Point Pleasant, because it was like all these cases were never closed. The serial killer, he said he knew, you know, the people going missing, the hikers, the UFOs, the lights that knew what his code was. You know, I'm not surprised if they don't have a dog man out here, do they, Bri? Out in West Virginia's crawling with dog man sightings.
They have them.
West Virginia.
If you have a Bigfoot, you have a dog man.
Absolutely.
It's a guarantee.
It's true. Chat, this has been amazing. And listen, mods, thank you so much for putting the links up for everybody. Steve, all the channels now, you've changed the one, you still have the radio show. Tell us, walk us through it. And go see Mothman Prophecies. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, watch it on or wherever you can find it streaming or for download. Got Missing Persons Mysteries. That's the big one. That's all my missing person content over there. New stuff coming up. And then I have Tales Untold, which used to be Among the Missing. All that's been migrated over, and then that channel's been rebranded to Pure Narration Storytelling.
Now, it's what kind of stories is that? What kind of stories?
Just all kinds of stuff. No
Weird
sleep,
and wonderful.
Weird and wonderful. Yeah, fiction, non-fiction, a little bit of everything for people that just like to listen to me talk.
Potpourri.
And then on Wednesday nights, Lee G from First Floor Audio and myself do From Beyond, which is UFO and related phenomena. We had some good fun over there. Great show coming up this weekend, and the radio show. Everything out there on the Clyde Lewis Ground Zero Radio Network. Thanks, Kathita, for putting it up there.
Thank you, mods. Thank you, Kat. We love you, baby.
These guys are great.
Thanks to everybody that was saying hi to Nicole and the baby. She's 24 weeks. We had a looking good. He's going to be a big boy. So.
My baby and me. Remember that now? When was that song sung? On live television in front of a live studio, an actual live studio audience, not a bunch of canned laughter. When was that music? When was that song sung? On what show? What popular show? As we leave,
I think it was on I Love Lucy.
Throw all these up.
I don't remember where.
Yes, yes, it was Desi Arnaz singing to his lovely wife, Lucille Ball, and she had quite the outfit on. She was the clothes horse for sure. Yeah. She was a fashionista. I love you guys.
Beds.
Me too. So let's go. Everybody have a good night.
They love this. Okay, Bride, tell us about yours. I'm looking for your.
So I'm starting a new show.
I know you got a new one.
Went down. So I was thinking about doing it in the summer.
Love you, baby.
Late summer. It's going to be Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. or whatever. Love to have both of you guys on and others. It's called
I love it.
Third Eye Live. Third Eye Live. I have the ability to take live phone calls. I have the ability to have read people. It's not all about paranormal. It's basically how to use your consciousness and people use it in the creation of art and love and
sounds everything. Beautiful.
So
love it. I can't wait.
We're gonna try to get everybody to have a positive vibe on it. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a totally different type of animal.
Well, you're looking at a chat right here that can definitely get it started in that direction, because I'll tell you what, after last night, Steve, it was very much same feeling, Brian, that I had when I wrote, when I was writing, and I looked up and there was time passed. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
They were talking through, and it's happened before, guys, but it was extremely strong last night. So listen, if somebody got some information out of that, if you heard something, because they really tricked me that time. I thought I was going into that whole talking about that young man's channel with how wonderful they handled these weather disasters and really saving lives and found a way to make a difference. Some of them, with what they had, or they made it happen. Even these young people that really weren't they couldn't go on local TV news and get a job, as a meteorologist. They would laugh them out because very Doogie Howser, you know what I mean? They're so young looking. Nobody was taking them serious. And these kids go out and knock it out of the park, and they're on there like 12 hours live. And not only that, people are putting in money donations, and they're so tight, with the proof of where the money's going. Yeah. Like that, so many out there. So look, you can do all kinds of things. Find your niche, find out where you can make a difference, go to your local school board meeting. Hey, look, even if you don't have kids in the local school, are you paying taxes? Go down there and go get local. Listen, teach your neighborhood
Yes,
kids.
ma'am.
Start a class out in your backyard. How to can cucumbers, how to make pickles, how to sew on a button. Whatever you do, blacksmithing, fixing cars, whatever it is,
Ammo.
do it and throw it out there, because you can make a difference. Don't let them tell you can't. Keep your lights burning. This stuff is crazy. It goes so deep. It's cows. We have cows. I love Keel. Steve, I'm telling you, you were right. The first time we ever had a conversation, we talked a little bit about John Fort, right? We talked about Keel, and Steve was telling me about it. I said, Steve, I was honest, I said, Steve, I don't know that much about it. I'm sure I've read stories in Fate magazine. I'm sure I've read readers, all the stuff, because he did write a lot of articles,
Yeah,
and
there's
we've
a
read
lot
all
of
the same
Keel
stuff.
articles in Fate.
Right. And I've read everything from Spring Heeled Jack to, all kinds of stuff, just like Steve. But over the decades, sometimes it bleeds together and you don't really get in deep. Like I have such a love for Harry Price now, just digging around in there,
There's so much out there. They have that big
all of
body of
warts
work,
and all.
and you take each one of those, and then you can spend an infinite amount of time digging in each one. There's just too much out there.
And their wisdom and gleaning from their wisdom. Look at all this we heard tonight. I mean, I had no idea Keel was trying to convince the local police department that you've got a serial killer amongst you.
Well,
Oh no, it's just another suicide. Oh no, what's going? Is this what's the name of that town in the UK? Midsummer, where you lose about 5 people a day in Midsummer. They got those cops hopping over there on that
when I
series. If you ever watched it, but it's like that. It's like Lost Boys up in here with the missing people and stuff. It's
the first
crazy.
thing I heard about what I was thinking about when I heard the serial killer thing is what I contacted you about when I had the download vision immediately about the girl getting killed. And I knew there's a serial killer in this town.
Mhm.
But you can't go to the police because you're a suspect.
And not
So-
only that, you're an out of towner. He was from New
So-
York City. Hey, are you kidding me? Good to have you. And it's great. And this my Rumble. Yes.
Oh,
Get
Rumble.
over there and
Yes.
join my Rumble, baby. Get in there and
Yes.
join me. Cisco unplugged over there. So good Lord, anything can happen. I think the seatbelt let it be on from Kendall Can on that one.
So they
Right,
just
Steve?
announced, by the way, that there is a serial killer in the area.
Yeah. Here?
Yep.
Wow.
By me now in Florida.
Oh, by you now.
Yeah, but in a couple weeks, I'll
There's
be up by
probably
you.
one, all around. I mean,
Yeah,
just
but I'll be up by you in a couple weeks, so I'll be having
cool
pizza with
beans.
you soon.
Good to see you. Pizza and the cold. Look, Boston Lager and this pizza's cold fired. A little old place. This guy got
That's
all the
me.
recipes from grandma, and it's New Jersey pizza. I'll tell you what. There are places. There's one every block, but that doesn't mean it's all good. So,
Yeah,
but
I
this was
know.
a good one. Good to see you, babe. Listen, thanks so much for coming, guys. This has been amazing. Just like he's saying here, there's so many things, like you said, Easter eggs and stuff like that. But go watch this movie and understand that I think I'm onto something with him being part of Keel too, because I think that's the way they tried to
Read
portray.
the book and watch the movie. Read the book twice.
Do-
Read it
oh,
before,
please do.
watch the movie, and then read it again afterwards.
Please do. I had I wanted to show you guys what was available before we left. If I can hit it right real quick. It's right there in the public. You can grab it. Let me see if this works. Can you see that? I don't know if you guys can see that.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I'll tell you what. If you go
There you
on,
go. Just go
if
on
you
there.
go
This
on
is on the
YouTube-
archives. And you can read it. And I think you're gonna absolutely love it. And it's something else. And so go in there, and the first chapter is Beelzebub visits West Virginia. And ladies and gentlemen, I think he is onto something, because
It is so 70s, the graphics.
There it is. Isn't it wonderful though? So get in there and you watch that, get the movie, stream it, whatever. And listen, go watch these fellas on their shows because these are two of the hardest working guys on the inner tubes, and they've got something for everybody, and they've always slinging wisdom or pointing to you other people that have it and say, hey, get a little bit here, get a little bit there. Might not understand it now, but just put it in your pocket, put it in your bag and your theories and shake them up, see what happens 10 years down the line. You might be glad you did. I love you guys. You're my brothers, and this was a blast, was it not? I love Keel.
Absolutely.
I love Keel. I think he was a wonderful character, and I'm glad we really reached into some dark corners there. I had no idea. How fascinating. Some of it's just absolutely bananas.
Surface there on him.
Yep. All right. Do I have something on the way out here? Let me see if I can find something for you guys.
Go ahead.
And listen, my love to Nick. And,
Yep.
Listen, guys, it's going to be rough waters ahead, right? This week coming up, you got through last week, you get through the week coming up. And if not, listen, get your shoes off. I don't care where you are, and dance the blues away. I love you guys. Good night, everybody. Good night, guys. I love you, chat. You guys are so cool. So good to see you. See you this week. We'll watch a mystery together. Good night, everybody. Good night, my brothers.